And here we are.
Well, hello there.
You would think that 6 minutes is long enough for me to get all the things done I need to get done, but it's just not. Like, I totally have forgotten to log in with this phone so I can actually demonstrate how to do things today. It's lovely, but
That's right.
while we're here, I'm gonna let y'all do a little chatting while I'm attaching this. So, hi, ladies. Nice to see you here.
Good to see
Hi.
you
So
too.
good. Yes.
Last week I was all by myself. I'm sure everybody just missed you guys.
I know, and I haven't been here for a few weeks, so it's really nice to be back. I love being live with you guys.
I like when it's all of us.
Yes, me too.
Feels a little bit more like family. And so here we are, 6 o'clock in the evening on a Thursday doing BiCrafty Bootcamp. There's no place else I'd rather be. So much fun to have you guys all here. And wow, can we talk about how great everybody's doing so far? Like,
It's amazing.
wow.
It's amazing. Like I said in the newsletter this week, they made a shawl this week. I mean, that's like, you're
Like
legit now.
That's
Yeah.
so fun. And not only that, like a lot of people have made a baby blanket already.
Yes.
It's true. It's true. They're BiCrafty now.
Yes, they are.
Yes, that's what I said. You are no longer working toward becoming BiCrafty. You are officially BiCrafty now. And that's exciting.
Absolutely. All right. So
and I kind of feel like even though there's still a lot to learn in crochet, because in crochet, there's so many things. I mean, there's a lot of things in knitting too, but crochet has so many variations and different techniques. There's so much that you can learn in it. But I kind of feel like what we're learning this week, starting to crochet in the round, kind of solidifies like, okay, now you're BiCrafty, because once you can do rows and rounds, you can pretty much do anything. Like after that, it's just, you're just building on what you've already learned. Like this feels like the last big thing that gets you to that point.
And like I kind of mentioned this, I think last week a little bit, like I don't want people to be discouraged that we're using the granny stitch a lot, because even in knitting, we use stockinette stitch a lot. And it's the sort of the same idea in my mind, at least. It's like, look, let's keep hitting it hard on these particular stitches. And then from there, you can learn a ton of different stitch patterns, but let's keep it consistent and keep our knowledge base right here. And then all of a sudden we're going to go like explode out. Right. So
I totally
go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I totally agree. Granny squares is how I learned to crochet, and that the repetitiveness of the granny stitches is really what gets you comfortable with your tension, how you're holding your hook, like all of that, the repetitiveness of it, I can't say that word, is really what got me most comfortable and made me feel confident to move on to other things. So I think it's fantastic that we're sticking with that.
Well, plus, I mean, it just makes sense to, I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, we can hear it.
So I think it makes sense to just take what we know and then expand on that knowledge. Like you can see all the different things that we can do with this particular, just this stitch pattern. And so it's much more than just the blanket on the back of Roseanne's couch, right? It's just it's more than that. You can do a lot of things with it. All right. So while I'm in here, I'm going to try and open up the chat. The chat wouldn't open up for me. Are you guys all in the chat? I mean, let's say hello to people.
Erica wants to know if they're ready to learn crochet socks after this week.
Oh man, let me say it this way. If you're not ready to crochet socks after this week, you will be very soon. So if your interest here is wondering if you should purchase the classic and colorful crochet socks workshop, my answer to you is it's half off. And you know that over the next 20 weeks, you will eventually be able to crochet socks. Mm-hmm. So why not get it at half off now? You know what I mean?
Totally agree.
It's a hell of a deal, everybody. And don't stop there. I mean, here's the thing. We haven't really expanded much on this very much, but the fact that there is an additional piece to this that you guys can get as an option with the Stitch Dictionary, it is amazing. The fact that there are stitches specifically written out for socks, for the socks that you are making in your workshop, that is a very big deal. That is not done in crochet. Like crocheters are not familiar with that. Like crocheters, for the most part, I mean, my friend Lindsay at Erin Lang Bag said it the best way. She said, there are a lot of crocheters out there who are craving instructions for things more than just a blanket or a stuffy. And I think that the sheer success of the Crochet Socks workshop right now shows that. Like,
yeah,
guys, it is going like gangbusters. People are so excited about it and so happy to have quality, wonderful instruction for something that is what, in most people's mind, it's what knitters are able to do. Crocheters don't make socks, right? So there's a lot of us that want to make socks. So it's been great. So that's the long and short answer, is that after this week, could you make socks? You probably could. Would I? And this is, I mean, I could be shooting myself in the foot here, right? Like I could, the salesperson would be like, yes, you can make socks, buy all the things. But the real deal, I'm your Marley giving you real deal instructions, right? If you were in my class, like in person, I would say you might not be able to do socks yet, but I believe you will be able to do socks. It might be that you're able to do socks like slipper socks, but this class is not a slipper sock class. Like that's the whole point of it, but you will eventually be able to do it. It's kind of like with you knitters out there. I started you off with a worsted weight yarn for socks before I took you to a sock weight yarn for toe up. Like we did worsted weight top down and then sock weight toe up, unless you're like Chrissy or like me and you just jump in with sock weight yarn right away. Cause you're like, I got this. Anyway,
I'm going for it.
So,
yeah. And honestly, I will say though, our knitters, when we did the knitting boot camp for crocheters, some of them jumped right in and started knitting a steeked sweater. So if you feel like you're grasping this and you feel like, you know what, I'm just going to give it a shot, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong.
It's true. A couple of people in the chat have already said that they've already got the sock workshop. They're excited about it. One person does want to know if the patterns will be available separately or if you have to get the workshop to get the patterns.
You have to get the workshop to get the patterns. That's how we're doing it at this time. It just makes sense to do it that way, because by the time you buy all 9 patterns, you're paying more than you would for a workshop, because we would be selling patterns for about $7 a piece. So what's 7 times 9? 49? 56. So, and full price of the workshop is $39.99. So if we were to sell the patterns individually, you would then just have the patterns, not even have the instruction behind the workshop. So it's cheaper for you to buy the workshop. Like, this is a no-brainer. And this is not a sales call. I'm sorry, guys. You guys got me on a roll though. You're getting $20 of coupons to spend in our Ravelry store. So if ever you were gonna buy something in our Ravelry store, dude, this is a watch. And
I'll tell you again, that crochet dictionary, the stitch dictionary too is amazing. Like, if anything, like having that stitch dictionary is going to be such a helpful tool when you move on and continue crocheting. So
can I just tell you, it's the coolest thing. Like, so we are only allowing, as of right now, only 3 affiliate designers, right? Each and every one of them is like, this workshop is cool. That stitch dictionary is amazing. Like all of them. And they're like, you're only selling it for $10. And I'm like, yeah. You're just like, really? I mean, the girl that helped us put together the funnel is like, we really should raise the price of that stitch dictionary. I was like,
she did.
Nope, not going to do it. She really did. Honest to God. I was like, nope, I'm not raising the price. We're going to keep it right there. We're going to let people get here with it. All right. So let's get off of this subject. If you guys want to know more about the sock workshop, you can go watch the videos. You can check out the sales page. You can check out my Instagram. I got all sorts of like reels going on and stuff about it. There's lots of information out there. I don't want you guys to feel like I'm sitting here trying to sell you stuff the whole time. I don't want to do that. So
you didn't bring it up in your defense.
What you were saying about granny squares, just real quick, people might, and some people just don't like granny squares. They have a feeling they don't like them. But like Chrissy was saying, it really builds up that muscle memory and that tension. And then once you know how to do that, you can change it in so many ways. Instead of using double crochets, you can use treble crochets. Triple, treble. Which one is it, Marley?
A treble.
Treble crochets. You can use single. You can use double crochets in different stitch combinations. So I hope no one's getting discouraged by them because I personally love granny squares, but even anyone who's like bored of them, it really does build onto so much more. Like you never have to make a granny square again if you don't want to, and you'll still use all the skills from learning how to make one.
I mean, there's people who never want to do garter stitch in their whole life, but you start with garter stitch.
Right.
I mean, this is where we are. We're doing double crochets, we're doing chains, and we're using these stitches to build skills. So, I mean, just bear with us with this, work with us with this, because everything you're learning, I mean, I'm not going to steer you wrong. That's why you guys are here, right? Like I'm not, let's just be honest, just trust the journey, All right. Okay. So here's the cool thing in tonight's class that we're doing here live. Let's see here. I want to make sure that my video is on pin. There we go. In the class we're doing here live tonight, when I had set up tonight's class, it was all about learning how to do motifs or in the round. And so that's where I backed it up. And again, I thought to myself, I'm going to make this so that we're continuing with the information we've already learned and build it even more. Last week, we learned how to make a shawl, and we talked about working those increases at the peak of the shawl, at the corner of the shawl. We're going to take that even further. And instead of just having like one corner of a shawl, we're going to build 4 corners of a square and create a granny square. Now, granny squares are a quintessential stitch in crochet. I've said that like for the last 3 weeks. You guys know this. It is a stitch that everybody knows. You say granny square, everybody knows what it is, right? It's kind of like you say red heart, everybody automatically thinks super saver, right? And it's funny to me because nobody's like, I shouldn't say nobody. It's so rare that people are like, well, Red Heart has other yarns out there. Like instantly people automatically think super saver, right? You say crochet, a lot of people automatically think granny square. You say knitting, a lot of people automatically think stockinette or sweater, right? That's kind of just like that's the process you go through. So learning more about the granny square, I want you to make sure, like, take it out of your mind, this idea of I hate granny square. We're learning these stitches, we're learning the skill, and we're going to move further from learning this, okay? So as we tackle the granny square, this also refers to the way motifs in general are made. And we're talking about motifs here, but these can also transition to making a hat in the round, making mittens in the round, making a sweater in the round, making a cowl in the round, making socks in the round. All of these sort of work together, okay? So we're focusing on a granny square to use that as our tool to learn the bigger picture of it all right? So let me pull up my notes because that's, I've spent a lot of time. I've spent the last like 3 or 4 hours writing up all of these notes to make sure I had everything I wanted you guys to get on here. If you don't already know, lesson 6 notes are already out on the blog. So the notes and today's pattern or this week's pattern, okay? When we talk about working in the round or working in motifs, we're talking about literally making squares or motifs and putting them together. Typically in knitting, you don't do a whole lot of that. There's some instances of that, but for the most part, you don't. A lot of the times, the closest you get is like a mitered item, right? We do a lot of miter. We did a miter when we did Tournament of Stitches this year. We talked a lot about mitered squares. But in knitting, when you talk about working in the round, whether it's making a hat or making a motif or whatever it is, even in knitting, most of the time you'll start, I don't want to say it that way. If you're making a hat in knitting, most of the time you start from the brim and go up. Whereas in crochet, most of the time you start from the top and go down. And to me, this is just me and my conjecture. It's because starting with crochet at the top with few stitches is easier than starting at the top with few stitches for knitting. Because with knitting, you have your double points, right? Where crochet, we just have to either do a chain where we chain and then slip stitch to form a ring, or we do something called an adjustable ring or a magic loop. Okay. So it's interesting to me because as a crocheter who became a knitter who translates a lot of my knitting stuff back to crochet, I like to crochet things from the bottom up, very similar to how I knit. When I say things, I mean hats. Like a lot of my crochet hats, you'll notice I make them from the bottom up. And I think that relates to me doing a lot of knitted hats from the bottom up, but also I find it easier to decrease than to increase. Anybody else feel that way? Mathematically, whatever it is, it's easier for me to decrease than to increase. No idea why. It's just one of those things. So there's this little thing. So the cool thing here is when we're learning these motifs in general are started from the center and then go out. They got started at the center and then they're worked in rounds. And if it's going to be a square or a hexagon or a circle or whatever it is, you get the points wherever you need them to be. And the rounds, each round increases the size it needs to be in order to make the piece bigger. Okay. Common sense here. Now, with crochet, for the most part, like I said, you start in the center and you work out. There are those instances where you can start from the outside and work in. There's even things called continuous crochet, where you might start from the inside and work out, and then you form the entire outside and work back in. Like there's a whole bunch of different ways to do stuff. So kind of going back to, I think what I have said to you guys in the first, probably one of the first classes, there are so many different ways to look at crochet, whereas in knitting, it's very much, these are your stitches, they're on your needle, this is the way you go. With crochet, sky's the limit, right? So what I'm teaching you today isn't necessarily the end all and be all, this is the only way you can do it, because it's not. There are a lot of different ways to do it. My goal in this lesson is to teach you a very basic way to work motifs using the granny stitch as an example, because we know it. And then later on, we'll take this knowledge and then expand it by learning other motifs. I have other motif patterns that we will be using in various lessons coming up, but sticking with this granny. And then we're also going to be using a granny stitch, not this granny square, but a granny square for the blanket project that you guys have already been told all the yarn for. We're going to use a granny types motif for a blanket also. So we're going to get very familiar with all of these stitches just so that you guys know. Am I missing anything so far, ladies?
No, we're doing good.
Okay. Deep breath, right? Need some water real quick. So what I want to do is I want to talk about how you can start a granny square. Okay, so we're going to start, and there are pros and cons to the different ways to start. And you'll see instructions out there that are written in various ways. So I'm going to transfer over to my hand. So give me just a second. At least I remembered to put on my headphones so I didn't blow you guys out. I can't put them on to start because it takes the sound from the countdown, so I can't put them on. Anyways, let me make sure this is on. And here we go. Okay. So you guys hear me just fine?
Yep.
I'm going to pin my hands.
Yep.
There we are. So you can see the hands.
I can see the square.
Yeah, I can see the square. I can't. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I meant. That's what I meant.
Yes.
Where are your hands?
Yeah, my hands are here. Can you see my hands? Okay. So here's the deal. Let's take this for example. This here is a stitch diagram of a granny square. Okay. This particular stitch diagram is very similar to the project we're going to work on. The difference here is that this square takes it further than what the squares you're going to be doing. All right. So the squares you're going to be doing are 1, 2, and 3. And then your round 4 was actually going to be different than this one. But let's take a peek at this to start. Because on the other stitch diagrams that we have looked at before, we have read the stitches back and forth, just like this, right? But when we're doing motifs like this, we're going to start in the center, and you'll see that instead of a solid row, we have a round. And notice that these are different colors. It's because Robin always makes them in different colors for me. And then the handwriting on there is because it's my own handwriting to show my repeat so that I can write the instructions. So when you're going to a motif like this, the first thing you want to do is look at the center to see how it starts. Now we recognize these symbols, right? We know that those little ovals, those are chains. So we can see that we're starting with chains. And we can also see that there is a dot there. And we know that that dot means a slip stitch, all right? Slip stitches are invisible in crochet, so it makes a lot of sense to me that these little dots are almost invisible when you're looking at the diagrams. But those dots are helpful when you're looking at a diagram like this because it helps you see where the end of your round is.
Sure. Go lay down.
Now, one thing that's different here between this diagram and some others is that, and this is where my granny square is going to be different than some others you might find on the internet, is that we have a half double crochet here that we use to join instead of doing a slip stitch join. Okay. So you'll notice that at the end of each round for my granny square, I join with a half double crochet instead of a slip stitch. Okay. So this is where we're going to keep going here. We have a chain 4 and we join with a slip stitch to the first chain. What that's going to do is create a little tiny ring. Okay. So that would be our start. The next set of instructions would be the first round. So we see that it's a chain 3 and then 2 double crochets. Then it goes chain 1, 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets. And then there's our half double worked into the third chain. There's a lot of things to decipher and pick through here on this very first round. Okay, so here's the first thing I want to decipher. Let me close this one up. You joined with a slip stitch and you chained 3. Does that chain 3 count as a stitch? Knowing what we know, okay, knowing what we know and have learned through this entire process, we know that typically we will look at these chains and see if something is worked into it to decipher if it's a stitch or not. Well, when we're working in the round like this, and we have these stitches that are going to be working into spaces, there's not a stitch that works into it. So this is where we kind of have to intuitively think through this. We're obviously working with a granny square and granny sets, which we're familiar with conveniently enough. And we know that each granny set has a set of 3 double crochets. So right here, I'm looking at 2 double crochets, which lets me know automatically that my chain 3 right here is going to count as a double. You guys with me on that? Okay. If it did not count as a double, I would have seen another double crochet there. And then that's where I have to think through also, you know, is that supposed to be 4 double crochets or 3? And then if you have written instructions, it will help you to read through and see if the chain 3 counts as a stitch or not. But for me, intuitively, this is how I would work through this. Everybody with me so far? Okay. So this is the first thing. We can see that this double crochet or this chain 3 is going to count as a double crochet. Great. Now we see all of these stitches here. And we see that they're not pointing into any one particular stitch. They're just evenly spaced around this essential circle of 4 chains, right? So that's my clue that, hey, these sets are all going to be worked into this space. They're not working into a particular stitch. They're all going into that space. Everybody with me so far? Okay. Now here is something I'm going to mention also. You'll notice that there are, I'm going to say 4 chain 1 spaces, but there aren't 4. Okay. So I'm going to tell you why here in a second. So here's a chain 1 space right here that creates this corner. There's a chain 1 space right here that creates this corner. There's a chain 1 space right here that creates this corner. There's no chain 1 space right here, right? Because we're using this half double, and I'm going to explain why we're using a half double in a minute. But can you see how the chain 1 spaces are above it? Can you see that? And that's because we're using this half double, because when you finish this half double, the loop on your hook is over here, making it so that when you do these chain threes, you're able to do them over here on this side, like this side of your square. And then you'll place these half doubles around the post of that half double. Like that half double is going to take the place of the chain one space. So you put them all there into that space there. But by working this half double, what's going to happen is it's going to place the loop on our hook over here instead of over here. So when we create these chain threes, they're automatically stacked right here. And that'll make sense as we're working. But my point here is that in this first round, we have these chain ones and this half double here, which I'm going to put a circle there just so that you can kind of get an idea. But we're setting up the corners of our square. Y'all with me? Okay, we're setting up the corners of our square. That's a lot that we've already been able to decipher in this first round. Okay, now I'm going to stick with the first round here for a second. I want to mention something. Sometimes instead of a chain 4, you'll have instructions that will tell you, let me grab a couple more markers here. Maybe I can get them to actually get in my hand. Instead of a chain 4, maybe you have one where it's a circle and then it goes 1, 2, 3. I'm going to keep with that half double. So these lines here, these are doubles. All right. Right here, it's just a plain circle. And then you have these 3 here. So this would read as chain 4. And then you would do all of this in the 4th chain from hook. Does that make sense? So what this is showing you is, oh, look, instead of having all of these chains right here, like you did before to join with the slip stitch, I'm going to make it to where you just put all of this into that one chain right there. It's going to be tight. It's not going to be like uber pretty. It's not going to look super bad, but you can do this. All right. So this is one way you could come about it. Another way is instead of that circle in the middle, it could be something like that. That's a magic loop, or called an adjustable ring. Okay. When you see this, it could then be followed up with all of that on the outside. And all that means is you're going to do all of this on the outside into an adjustable ring, which we're going to talk about the benefits of all of these and the cons to all of these. But these are 3 different ways you could start a motif, any motif, in the center. Okay. Because again, we're using these granny sets as an example, but these could be shells. These could be singles. These could be trebles. These could be a lace stitch. These could be a V-stitch. These could be anything. All right. But like I said, rather than showing you and explaining to you what different stitches are, I'm sticking with ones we know and then teaching you a new style, a new technique, a new format. Everybody with me? All right. Anybody say anything, y'all? How's it going?
Nope. Everything looks good so far.
Okay.
Everyone's liking the graphs and able to follow along, and it's looking good.
Okay, good. All right. So like I said, for me, I use these half double crochets to join to my chain 3s. So for this, I join with a half double crochet to the 3rd chain from hook. This is actually something I learned from Robin years ago. And I loved it. The minute I found it, I loved it. But Chrissy will attest to the fact that this is not something that's normal. It should be. But instantly, most people who pick up and make a granny square, they will tell you that you come to this part, you chain one and you join with the slip stitch. And then you slip stitch over to where you're supposed to get to here, and you start and you move around. Yeah, that's another way to do a granny stitch for sure. But the benefit of working this half double crochet into that chain one, like I mentioned, is you guys know that once you finish a stitch, the loop on your hook begins your next stitch, right? That's like the place where your next stitch is going to start. So here's our top hat to our half double crochet. So we know this is where our hook is going to be with our loop on it. So we're going to instantly chain 3 here, and we're going to treat that half double crochet as a chain 1 space. Okay. So we're purely using it so that way our stitch is in the correct place we want it to be, but we're going to treat it like a chain 1 space. So as we come around and work these stitches around that half double crochet, it'll make sense because you're treating it just like you would if it was just a chain 1 and you're working into that space. All right, everybody with me so far? All right, so here's the next big part. So round 1 establishes our corners. All right, this is not written in your instructions for the pattern, but I will tell you guys that I have found it helpful that once you finish round 1, put a different color stitch marker in each corner. It will help you stay oriented, so that way you know what's happening, okay? You could use a different stitch marker in each corner. Let's look at round 2. Round 2 has us start with the chain 3, which we've already discovered that our chain 3 is going to count as a double, right? So I'm going to make it so like it looks like it's a double. And what we're going to notice here, I'm going to use my blue, well, I'm going to use my pink for this. We have our chain 3, and then we have 2 double crochets, a chain 1, and 3 double crochets, all into that chain 1 space, or all around that half double crochet, right? So this right here all goes into this big space, right? Looks very similar to the peak of your shawl, doesn't it? You guys see that? Your shawl had 2 down here, right? 2 or 3, I can't remember. But it's like it's the corner of your shawl. You guys see that? Yeah? Work with me here. I'm going to take this. Let's fold it along the line of our corners. What does that look like? Don't everybody scream at once. Looks like your shawl, doesn't it? Think about this. You have these chain 1s here, right? For your corners. Obviously, you can't keep that chain 1 as a corner. So you had to make a treble. Remember, we made the treble so that we could keep our corners long. So if we fold this, if we were literally, so there's our chain 1. If we put a treble here, and then over here, this would have been our chain 5, right? 4, 5. Can you guys see this? Anybody else mind blown? Sort of like what is happening? I can't believe I'm understanding how this works. You guys see that? Isn't that cool? So really, you could take motifs like this, take your chart, fold it in half. You'd have to make your adjustments along this line to make sure it expands out. Treat this part right here as your center. You no longer have to worry about these join rounds, right? Because you're going to be working back and forth. But we already know what these stitches are, so we don't have to worry about them joining. And then we know that these half double crochets actually count as chain 1s. So we could replace those with just chain 1s. And all of a sudden, Bob's your uncle. We have a shawl. Everybody following? Chrissy, you're on mute, hon, if you're trying to talk.
I'm muted, sorry.
That's all right.
We had a great question come in from Crochet Cabana. She said, can you use the stacked double instead of the chain 3 in this case?
Yep.
So yes.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely could. And I love that you asked that question, because that's exactly proof that you are learning. You're learning how the stitches work, how they coordinate with one another, and where you can make substitutions, and where the chains represent stitches, how to treat those as stitches or as stack stitch or whatever it may be. But does this, folding this like this, does this make sense to you guys? Isn't that crazy? Isn't that just like the craziest thing? All right, do you see now why I'm sticking with the granny square to demonstrate everything? Because it just makes sense for us. Okay, so I'm gonna unfold this. You're gonna disregard all those stitches I showed you right there, okay? All the trebles that I added in there to show you what you learned last week as opposed to this. So these corners, like what I was trying to say here, these corners, all of these stitches are going to go in that corner. And then it's a matter of just trying to get to the next corner. So when we were working on the shawl, remember, as we worked our outside, and as we did each row, we had an extra set of granny sets, right? So like on this example, this would be row 1. And then here's our start, here's our center. So we have 1 granny set. Here's our start, here's our center, we have 2 granny sets. Here's our start, here's our center, we have 3 granny sets, right? Like we learned that, right? Same idea. When you're doing the square, as each round gets bigger, you're gonna have a granny set, 1 more granny set between each of the corners for every round. And that's on each side. So let me get another marker here. This thing's going to be a disaster when all is said and done, but let's see here. Okay. We have our corner we did right here. Then we have, here is our chain 1. And that chain 1 is where the next granny set on the next round is going to be able to be built. Okay. Here is our next corner. Chain 1. Here is our next corner, chain 1. Here is our next corner. This would be our chain 1, but instead of the chain 1, we're doing that half double. So that way our 3 chains will be stacked in the right place. You guys with me? Okay. So that's the second round. Let's take, I'm sorry. My daughter knows I'm on the phone. All right. So I got to fold like this, maybe. Thank you. All right, give me just a second. She is still trying to call me. Try this one more time. I apologize. Okay. So we did round 2. You come to round 3. We have our chain 3. Then we have 2 double crochets. And we're going to put those 2 double crochets around this half double because we're going to treat it like it's a chain 1. You guys with me? So we're treating that like it's a chain 1. And then there you go. So then all of that represents a granny set, right? This is going to be our first like extra granny set of the next round, because then we have our chain 1 here. And what you really like to think, what I like to think about is, I don't just think about as the granny set. I think of the granny set and the chain 1 as a set. Does that make sense? Like I think of that as that's my repeat. Then you come over here, you have a corner. So all of this is going into that chain 1 space. Okay. Then you have your chain 1 and a granny set goes into that. Then you have this chain 1, because that's our extra chain 1 that's going to make it so that on the next round we have another place to put a granny set. All of this goes into that corner. You guys following here? You see how this works? So then right here again, all right there. There's the chain 1 to give us our increase. And then we have all this. I'm just going to continue here. There's our chain 1. Here is our corner. we're back to where our half double crochet is, which, you know, takes the place of our chain 1 that joins to the top of that chain 3. And now we have just finished the next round. And you can see here with this blue, this dark blue, we have an extra set of granny sets on that round. On the following round, we would have 2 sets of granny sets. Can you guys see it now that it's a hot mess in here? It's just like what you guys were doing when you did your square or your shawls. See, there's 1, there's 2, here's 3. You guys see it? So with each, so the point here is that as you're working in the round, we're going to take what we learned from the shawl by increasing at that center, but now we have increases at 3 corners, not just 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm sorry, did I say 3? I meant 4, like 3 more. But what's going to happen is from one corner to the next corner on each round, you're going to have 1 more granny set. And that's what's going to help you expand. And it's all because we're doing that extra chain 1 there. So every time you do the next row or round, every time you do the next round, you'll have an extra chain 1 space to work a granny set into. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. All right. I'm going to print this page once again, and I'm going to mention something else to everybody. This is a question that I actually got in Marley's Minions this week. And the question was, does the granny square or the granny stitches or whatever you want to call them, do they always have a chain 1 between them? And the answer is no. You don't have to have a chain 1 between each one of your granny sets. You could have no chains. There are things that are done with no chains, and you would literally just work into the space between that double and that double. Makes for a very tight granny square. It's very pretty. You could do 2 chains. There's lots of different options. So just to be able to reiterate the fact that not all squares are done the same. Man, this is like such a hot mess. I need to print this. Because not all squares are done the same. That's just another way that this can be changed. Is that it can be, why is this not printing? Print, please.
Yeah, just to jump in and piggyback on what you said too, Marley. So for example, if you're doing, like I've done granny squares for a pillow, if I'm doing granny squares for a pillow, like maybe it's an insert, right? So there's a pillow on the inside of here, but I don't want the white of that insert to show so much, but I want to do a granny square. I would do no chains in between because that's going to give me the tightest available option for my granny square. I just made a sweater with all granny squares recently. And again, I only did 1 chain in between there because the no chains was a little too tight and 2 would have been too big. So I did 1 chain in between each of them. So yeah, it's totally customizable and really will depend on what you're actually making, right? So if you're doing something like a pillow cover or a sweater or something like that, the smaller the chains in between 0 to 1 or 0 to 2, the less amount of change you have in between them, the tighter the fabric will be.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. How are we feeling? How's everybody feeling in the room? Are they just like, this is crazy, or this is getting confusing, or just curious? All right. So that's a whole lot to take in so far. So we're back to just a plain diagram here, which you're probably looking at it being like, oh man, I can understand it now. Hopefully that's the way you're feeling. Because at the start, you probably were looking at it like, I have no idea. I have no idea how that's all working out. Where now you can look at this and say, oh, that's where I'm going to start. There's a slip stitch there. There's chain 3s. Oh, look, there's half doubles. Those are going to take the place of my chain 1s. Here are my corners. And you can begin to expand from there. Now, knowing this particular stitch like we do, and knowing that these our granny sets are going to go into these chain one spaces, right? It's a granny set, chain one, so that you can get to the next space. We know that if we just continually work these rounds, each round just the same way, we're going to keep increasing, just like in your shawl. Every time you did another row in your shawl, you kept getting another number of granny sets. Same idea when you're working a granny square. If you continue making it, you can make it as big as you absolutely want. Okay. So in theory, you could take this pattern and just make an entire blanket with it. I mean, there's a lot of people that have done that. Okay. Everybody good so far? Whew. All right. So the benefits. Making the chains like this and joining with a slip stitch and then putting all those stitches into that ring. The pros, it's very easy to do. You have like actual, like something substantial to hang on to be able to work these stitches into that ring. It makes it fairly easy. However, once everything is, it also makes it very stable and just good, right? However, once you get all of those stitches in there, you're going to have a little bit of a hole in the middle. Okay. So it's not going to be completely sealed. It's also unflexible. It's not going to have any give or anything. So if you accidentally make these chains bigger than intended, and on the next one, you make them the right size, one of your squares is going to have a bigger center than the other square. Okay. Does that make sense? Sort of the same idea if you were to work everything into one chain. Remember when I mentioned this one? And then you would put all of the stitches into that one. You can't tighten up that one. All right. You can't really do anything to adjust it. It is a little bit tighter than this because it's just dealing with one chain. Not my favorite, but it's done that way. I think the favorite of many is the magic loop or the adjustable ring, which is going to be funny because I know that when I say magic loop for knitters, you guys are thinking, oh, magic loop, like with one long, one long cord for knitting, but it's not that. It's working everything into a ring that you then pull the tail and it tightens up, which coincidentally, you guys, you can do in knitting also. All right. So for our pattern, we actually use this method, but you can use this method. So I want to make sure I show you how to do this method. The other thing I want to point out, am I missing anything, guys, so far? I don't think I am. I think I'm going pretty good.
No, things are going good. Things are going well, and everybody is very excited and they're enjoying this. They're saying that they're really loving that this goes to show for visual learners and they can read the patterns, but also understand the chart. So people are pleased.
Good. Awesome. All right. So I want to show something else here. For us, we're reading this chart in the round. Okay. And one of the things about motifs is you can make motifs where you read it in the round. And by the way, left-handed, you can read it the same way we are. It's just yours are going to look the opposite way. All right. That's actually one of the big benefits of charts is it makes it easier for you to see exactly where stitches are going to be and such. But here's the deal. We can see here as we're reading this, from right to left, we read all the way around and it joins here. And then we have chain 3. And you can tell immediately that we're going to read from right to left again, because here's our join. If our join was on this side, we would be like, oh, we're supposed to read it in this direction. Okay. Does that make sense? So again, to use this to our advantage, we can see that our join, and this half double crochet is used as our join. Our join is always on the right side of our turning chains. You see that? So because most people are right-handed, that's the wrong way to say it. The majority of instructions are written for right-handed. That's the way to say it. You read it from right to left, there's our join. You read it from right to left, there's our join. You read it from right to left, there's our join. If you're left-handed, your join will be on this side. but it's the same idea. You're reading around and around and around. So you're not going to turn your work. If this were something where we would turn our work, you would see that this half double crochet would actually be on this side, and the instructions would be written completely different, but you would see where it was like, this is this way. And maybe there was a slip stitch here, and then this is this way. And there's a slip stitch here. And then this is this way. And there's a slip stitch here. And then this is this way. And there's a slip stitch here. In future motifs that we learn, I have motifs that are written that way to show you that. But I wanted to show that to you here because there are granny squares that are written for you to turn each round also, which begs the question, and a lot of people will ask, well, if I'm turning each round, like if I get to the end of the round and I join with a slip stitch and then I turn, am I still working in the round or am I working in a row? And the answer is you are still working in the round. It is still called a round. You will, if a designer has written instructions where it's something like this, and they're saying, oh, you're working in rows because you're joining and then you're coming around and it's working in a row again, that is not correct. These are still rounds. They're called joined rounds that you then turn. So they're turned join rounds. Okay. Rows are just that. Rows are like what we did last week with our shawl. You worked back and forth in rows. These, you're actually joining to form a circle, so they are rounds. Okay, that's a really big thing to point out because that's something that'll be important for you to learn future. All right, so the turned rounds, how to know what direction you're going to read in when you're looking at a chart. The other thing I want to point out is, and this goes for the written instructions now. So what I want you to do is if you're looking at written instructions, and this goes, we talked a little bit about this when we talked about last week. When you come to instructions where, let's say it was 3 double crochet and then chain 1, and then you came and it says parenthesis, and it says 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, and parenthesis. That means you're going to do all of this that's inside the parenthesis in the stitch or space indicated here. So it will usually say, it'll do all of this. It'll say in single crochet or whatever. Okay. You guys with me on that? So that's parentheses. If you come up to something like, let's say let's continue on with this. It says single crochet, and then it says chain 1, and then it says 3 double crochet, chain 1, and it's a bracket. And then it says twice. Okay. Brackets indicate that you're going to do this set of instructions this many times. All right. So parentheses mean all of this goes into one space, all in one. Okay. Brackets means you're going to do all of this X number of times. You guys with me on that? That's important for pattern reading. Okay. Parentheses indicate you're going to do everything inside the parentheses in a stitch or space or whatever that's written outside of the parentheses. When you're doing a bracket, it's telling you that you're going to do whatever this set of stitches are. You're going to do this set of stitches X number of times. So in a bracket, it could say 3 double crochet in the single crochet, chain 1, 2 half double crochet in the single crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet in double crochet, chain 1, and then end bracket. Okay. And it could say 3 times. I literally just made something up there. But knowing what I do about brackets, I know that whatever I'm happen to be following along, okay, I'm going to do 3 double crochets in this next single. I'll chain 1. I'll do 2 half double crochets in a single crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochets in the next double, chain 1. Oh, 3 times. So I got to do it again. So I'll come up here and I'll do it again. And then I'll come up here and I'll do it again. If it just says 3 times, you only do it 3 times. Usually it would only say 3 times more if it's a repeat from star. Okay. Now that's not something that's like a standard or whatever. So this could say 3 times more, but for the most part, usually it'll give you a bracket and it'll tell you how many times to do it. But then if you're given instructions where it says, you know, you have your star and then it gives you a bunch of instructions, right? And then it has your semicolon and it'll say repeat from star 3 times more. That's an indication that, okay, you work all the way through star and then you're going to do it 3 times more. This one is you work through everything in your bracket a total of 3 times. Is everybody with me on that? Okay, this goes hand in hand with your pattern reading. That's why I'm making sure that you know what that means. Everybody with me? Yeah, yeah. You guys are going to have to talk to me because you see the chats. I don't. Okay.
Yep, everyone says that they're doing good with this.
Okay. All right, let me scroll down. I don't want to miss anything, so I'm making sure I'm trying to hit all of my notes here. Told you about the granny squares, granny sets, joined rounds, turned rounds, changing colors, you guys. You know how to change colors. You're going to change color in the last draw through 2 of any row. There are some patterns that will have you actually fasten off on a round and rejoin, like maybe at a corner with a slip stitch and start a new color around. Are those rounds or rows? Those are rounds. Those are still rounds. So even if you have to fasten off and then rejoin with the slip stitch at some other point in a pattern and you're still working in the round, that's still a round. It just happens to be with a different color. Okay. So there are some patterns that are written that way. So that would be if you cut your yarn and then rejoin in another spot. The last thing I want to point out is it's possible to join motifs like this together with it written just like this. You can seam them together, or you could do things called join as you go, where you actually create this final row here to where it's the final row on 2 different squares. We're going to learn that, I think, next week. I'm pretty sure next week or the week after. We're going to learn join as you go. But for this lesson, we're going to create squares and then seam them together using a slip stitch seam to make a super cute ear warmer that is lined with an old sweatshirt, or if you have fleece or whatever like that. Chrissy, do you have it there with you so you can show everybody? Because it's really awesome, you guys.
I do. I have it. So I don't know. Am I on speaker view? Can you see me?
I'm going to make sure you're on speaker view right now. Look at you.
How cute is this? So it's just granny squares. That's all you're doing. You're going to connect them. And then it's lined on the inside. Look at that.
Dude, that's so cute.
So fun. So fun. And it's not, listen, I am no seamstress. So if I can do this, you can do it too.
It's super adorable. So here's the deal. At first, when I set up this class, I was like, oh, we're just going to make a bunch of squares. That way we could do stuff later on with them. And you guys, I was at Target. I saw something like this at Target for $10. I was like, well, crap, we could do that.
True story.
My true story. Yep, true story. I was like, we could do that. Sent a picture to Chrissy. I said, hey, you want to make it? She's like, yes. I said, you want to get an old sweatshirt and line it? She's like, oh, well, that's a good idea.
Yes.
Any excuse to go to the secondhand store for Chrissy. That's what that is.
You know that. You know that.
So this is what we're doing. So whether you like granny squares or not, I need you to make at least one granny square so you can learn everything that we were talking about tonight. But ideally, what you want to do is you want to grab, if you have your mini packs, your Brava mini packs. I don't know how many of you were able to get your Brava mini pack. We're going to use this also for the blanket that we will be making with, they're actually called granny dot motifs is what we're going to be doing. But we're going to use some of this yarn to make these granny squares. So you can use the main color, whatever main color you chose for your blanket. We could use that for this headband, or you can use whatever color you want. It really doesn't matter. You use whatever you want. You can make them all different colors like Chrissy did. You can make them all the same color. You could do anything you want. This is 100% yours. And do you have to line it? No. But you know what? Why not? When it's that easy, it's so easy, you guys. Just a little hand stitching. And if you're good at a sewing machine, you can use a sewing machine. It's no big deal. Super easy. And Target's selling them for $10. And if we could do it on our own, why not? I mean, we're doing it anyways. Let's do it.
Right.
Just makes sense. They also made mittens, which is funny because it was crocheted granny squares on the top, and then it was knit. The rest of the mitten was knit.
Oh, cute.
Talk about totally BiCrafty. Like I was this close to buying it to be like, all right, can I really knock this off? Should I knock this off?
I'm telling you, you laugh about the thrift store, but I found a cardigan there just recently, and the whole cardigan is knit, and there is a granny square border around the neck and around the wrists and on through the back. And I was
granny
like, yes.
They are getting a resurgence, you guys. We have a lot of granny square projects coming up, and I'm just letting you know, like, they are a big deal. So it might be that you don't want to do a granny square. Maybe you grew up in the 70s and 80s and you were like, everybody I knew did granny squares. That's why I learned to knit. And you're just like, well, now I'm going to learn to crochet, and Marley's making me do granny squares. Well, here's the killer. You probably have grandkids or nieces and nephews or friends who are going to absolutely love the fact that you're making this, and everybody's going to want one. This is going to be one of those pieces that if you are at a craft fair and you make things for craft fairs, not only do you have a granny square piece that everybody wants, you are going to upcycle something, which is a huge buzzword. Okay. And you're selling something that can be found at Target, but it's homemade. Everybody wants that. This is a guaranteed sale if you are somebody who makes stuff for craft fairs. Just letting you know.
It's so true. My youngest sister, she's like really boho hippie. That's like her whole vibe. That's just who she is. Granny squares are huge. She wants everything granny right now. Everything I'm making her daughter is granny. So it's definitely made a resurgence. Absolutely.
Right.
And it does it happens like every few years it comes back. So it's something that if you learn now, someone will want it later too. Two things real quick. One, I wanted to say, anyone who doesn't know, I think you might have mentioned it before, Marley, but crochet cannot be done by machine. Knitting can be done by machine, but crochet can't. So those $10 headbands were made by someone by hand. Much better to make it yourself if you can make it yourself. Much better for the world. So that's my little soapbox. And then the other thing is people are asking where they can find the chart for this. So I was wondering if we're going to put that on the blog post for them.
Yes. So I didn't put it on the blog post because I didn't want to confuse people with the pattern for the ear warmer and this, because like I said, this chart has more rounds on it than the ear warmer has. You only will do 3 total rounds of granny stitch on the ear warmer, and your final round is single crochets. So I was going to put this on there, but then I thought it would confuse people, and I was going to ask Robin to make a specific chart for the ear warmer, and then I could add both. Do you know what I mean? So yes, the plan is to be able to add that eventually, but I did not put it on there right now on purpose because I did not want you to accidentally do like 5 rounds and be like,
because if you do, yes, if you do more than 3. So I'll be totally honest. I started with a larger hook and made almost the whole thing and was like, oh, that's enormous. That's not going to fit my head. That's huge. And had to redo the whole thing in a smaller hook. So yeah, you don't want to accidentally make 5 rounds and then your squares are this big and it's taking up your whole head.
Yeah. So the smaller the square, the better. And which is a really good example of, because you understand how a granny square works, and you know that if you wanted to, you could eliminate that chain one between your granny sets. If you wanted to make yours a little bit smaller, you could eliminate your chain one, not the one in the corners. You still want your one in the corners, but the ones in between your corners. And all you would do is, when you do your granny sets, the following rounds, you would put them in the space between those granny sets. So if you have gauge issues at all, that's an option for you to do. All right. So my goal right now is I want to get through some of these granny squares, so that way we can walk them through how to do this. Yeah. We're an hour in. Yeah. I just talked a lot, y'all. Do you guys know how much money people pay for these? Like, do you know that a 3-hour class at Stitches is $150? $150. Yeah. 3 hours. You're getting way more than what you get in those classes
every week.
Yeah. And if you get the workshop, like the sock workshop, think about that. Like there are over 18 modules, and some of those modules have 3 or 4 videos in each of those. There's so many hours. Anyways, just the things I think about.
True.
Okay.
It's true.
I'm going to go back to my hands now. And hopefully you are on my hands. Let's hope you are. Let me see if I could do this. Spotlight for everyone. Does that work? Hopefully that works. We'll see. All right. So we're at my hands. So I'm going to make sure I'm reading through the instructions as they're written, because the last thing I want to do is do something different. So these instructions, once again, the link is in the video description of this video. So we are calling this the Scrappy Granny Ear Warmer. Scrappy Granny Ear Warmer. And that's because really you can use any yarn you want. That's a worsted weight to do this. We are using our Brava mini packs because we love this yarn. It's really great. There's lots of different color options for us. It just works really well. Now, do you have to line this, by the way, guys? No, you do not. But it's just, it sets your piece apart just a little bit different. All right. So as Chrissy said, we're going to make 5 motifs. Why 5? Because I hate the number 4, and Chrissy knows that. So we're going to use our color A. And for me, I'm just going to use a couple colors here. I'm not going to pull out all 4 colors, but she used 4 different colors. So I put a slip knot on my hook, and I'm going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Join with the slip stitch to the first chain to form a ring. So I'm going to come over here to the first chain. I'm going to stick my hook directly into it, yarn over, pull through the chain, and pull through the loop on my hook. You're going to see I have a ring. Okay, everybody see that? All right, now we start round 1. We're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. That counts as a double crochet. I will let you guys know, if you wanted to start with a stacked, you could. If you want to start with the chain 2, you could. You do what works best for you. Okay. Now we're going to go into this ring. Notice I'm holding my ring the whole time, so that way I don't lose it. I'm going to put all of these stitches into this ring. So I'm going to do 2 double crochets. So there's 1 and 2. So this here completes my granny set, right? Because the chain 3 counts as a double crochet. So I chain 1. I do 3 double crochet. So there's 1. Again, I'm putting them all into that big space. 2. There's 3, and then chain 1. Now I'm going to pause here for a second. That chain 1 I did over here, that's a corner. Remember when I told you about putting markers on your corners? Let's go ahead and do that just so that you guys can have some orientation of where I am. I might not have a bunch of different colors though. But so there's 1 corner. This chain 1 is going to be another corner. I'll mark it here in a minute. But I'm going to do 3 more double crochets. There's 1, There's 2. There's 3. So I'm going to come back here to that chain 1. Let's put a marker. Chain 1. So that'll be another corner. The markers will really help you see stuff. Now, the other thing, did you just see what I did? Because you're working these stitches around these chains, you can literally grab the chain and scooch the stitches. Okay. One, 2, 3. There's my chain 1. Put my marker there. Now, this is the part where if this were a different pattern, I would chain 1 and join with a slip stitch to the 3rd chain. Okay, so I'm gonna show you what that would look like. And then that would be a corner. But see where it puts my loop? Okay. That's why I wrote the pattern. Instead of doing a chain 1, we yarn over our hook, go to the 3rd chain from hook, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through that 3rd chain. So you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, draw through all 3 loops on your hook. Look where it puts my loop now. And if I treat the body of my half double crochet as my chain 1, it puts me so that way I'm ready to build my corner right here, just working around that space. It just makes it, just puts my loop in a better place. You guys with me so far? All right. So I'm supposed to change colors. To change colors, remember I want to do it on my last draw through. So I'm actually going to undo that half double, yarn over my hook, go into the 3rd chain from hook, or not 3rd chain from hook, the 3rd chain of the turning chain, yarn over, pull up a loop. This is where I would actually cut this because you're going to fasten off this color. I need to write that in the pattern that you will cut each color as you change. Leave a nice long tail. Grab your next colors. This would be your color B. Yarn over and draw through with your next color. Now we're going to continue. So this will be round 2. Chain 3. Now you'll see here in the instructions, there's a parentheses. So everything that's inside the parentheses are going to go right there. We're going to treat that half double crochet like it's a chain 1 space. So I've yarned over my hook, go into that big space. It's going to act like it's my corner. So I'll do 1 double. There's my 2nd double, chain 1, and then I'm going to do 3 doubles all into that same space. So 1, 2, and 3. So right here, that chain 1, that's a corner. Okay. So we're on our following round. This next chain 1 right there, that's my increase. That's going to allow the following round to have a double crochet set. I'm sorry, a granny set placed right there, right? So there's the chain 1. I skip all of this. I come over here to the next chain 1 space. I know that it's a corner. So because it's a corner, I know that I'm going to put 3 double crochets. So there's 1 and 2 and 3. I'll chain 1 and I'll do 3 double crochets. And because I know somebody's going to ask, they're going to be like, why not chain 2? You could chain 2 just like we did on the shawl, right? You could, but I don't find it necessary for this one. So I didn't write it to be that way. But if you wanted to, you absolutely could. whatever works to make your stitch the way you want it. So there's a corner. You guys see that? Chain one. Come over here to this next corner. We're going to do our corner stitch here, which all these instructions are in parentheses, right? So you do the 3 doubles, chain one, and then 3 doubles. I'm just keeping, I normally don't keep markers in my corners, but I think it will help you to see where things are, right? Chain one. I'm to my last corner here. One, two, three. Normally this would be a chain one, right? And then I would join with the slip stitch. So that would complete, but I want a half double crochet there. So instead of that chain one, I'm going to do a half double. So I yarn over my hook, 3rd chain of the turning chain, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then we're changing colors again. So you will cut your yarn, leave at least 4 to 6 inches, and grab your next color. I'm gonna grab just another color. It's in here. I haven't opened my bag yet. Pretty colors. How about that one? Is that too dark to see? Is that one better? Is that too close? Cool. That's a good one.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
I don't know if you pull from the center or outside, so I'm just going to pull from the outside on this just to make it easy. Make sure you keep those wraps around your hook nice and taut. Yarn over, draw through all 3. And you continue. Now, don't be tempted to crochet over these ends. Don't be tempted. All right? Because why? We don't crochet over our ends. We're better than that. Somebody's going to get mad at me and tell me that I'm talking down to them.
We are better than that.
We are better than that. Don't hate. Actually, as you finish each square, you guys take the time to weave in your ends as you go, because if you don't, it's a real pain in the butt in the end. And I know there's going to be some of you that are like, but we're lining it. What does it matter? Well, you have these holes, y'all. They're going to poke through. Don't do that. Take pride in your work. Okay. Off the soapbox. Okay. So we're here. This is our final round of actual granny stitches. Makes a lot of sense. We chain 3. Even without looking at the pattern, you guys should be able to do this. We have this half double crochet here, which is taking the place of a chain 1, but we're treating it like a chain 1. So we'll do our total of 3 doubles, which remember our chain 3 counts as 1. So there's that. Chain 1, we're to a corner. So you go to wherever your next chain 1 is. If it's a corner, do a corner. If it's just a regular chain 1, do your granny set. I mean, this is cake. You guys got this. This is why so many people like to do, excuse me, let me try that one more time. This is why so many people like to do granny stitches, because you can seriously just zone out with them. But I will tell you guys, if you don't pay attention to your corners and all of a sudden you are not increasing appropriately, the center of your granny stitch, your granny square, I'm sorry, will start to pucker up. So true story here. You guys ready? Now, if there are any little ears around, cover the little ears. I'm going to tell you a story. Everybody sit down. Miss Marley's going to tell you a story about the first time I did a granny square. All right. True story. First off, when I learned to crochet, I was immediately hooked. And when I learned, it was at the start of eBay, the start of PayPal. And I was so ecstatic that I could find crochet books on this little site called eBay. So I got on there and I bought so many different books, crochet books. I also bought a bunch of yarn. I was like, I've never seen this kind of yarn before. Bought a bunch of yarn, had a bunch of yarn scraps, like people would get rid of their scraps. And I was like, well, I could use that, you know, as you do. So I had all of these yarn scraps in reds and pinks and whites. And I had this new crochet book and it was showing how to do a granny square. I was like, oh, that's what that's called. A granny square. I've seen that before. So I'm reading through the book and there's no charts, just words. I'm reading through. And those of you who have taken my classes before, you know that I get jumbled up when I'm trying to read through the words. I always lose my place, like always. So I always rely on charts. This is before I knew about charts. So I'm reading the words and I pull out my yarn. So I start off with like a peachy sort of color. Okay. So I start right there. I read through and I complete it and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. All right. So what color do I do next? I'll do sort of like this lighter pink color. So I pick out the light pink and I work around, and somehow from round 1 to round 2, I went from 4 corners to 3 corners. Then the next one, I picked out like a little bit of a darker mauve pink. And then on that one, somehow I went from 3 corners to 4 corners again. And then I went to like a little bit darker pink. And then on that one, I think I increased somehow, like I had the corners, but I had more stitches increased on the sides. All right. So long story short, I had a piece that looked like it puckered up like this. And then it became very round. And if you guys recall the colors I used, it was like a peachy white, a lighter pink, and then a darker pink. And then I went back to white. You guys, I made a giant boob. It looked like a boob. I was like,
I was sitting over here laughing and then realized that I was on mute.
I got done with the granny square and it was big. I mean, I was going to town. I mean, it was big. And I was like, see, this was it. I looked it up and I go, well, would you look at that?
Look at me go.
I was so impressed with myself. Oh my gosh. Oh, I had kept that thing for years. I don't know if I still have it because it just cracked me up. But then after that, I figured out what I was doing. But the point here is that it's very easy to get off track. And
it's
if
true.
you do make a boob, it's okay. There's no judgment.
You live and you learn.
It's true story. It really happened. It was so funny. But yeah, granny squares can be a little bit tricky if you aren't paying attention to where your increases and stuff are. All right, I just want to get through this because I'm sure everybody's like, okay, this is making a lot of sense now. These colors are really great together, by the way. Happy accident there.
I do really like the color options in the Brava mini packs because it's literally all their colors. And they're just, the Brava has just some really bright colors.
Mm-hmm. Feels really good. You know what it feels like to me? It feels like with love to me. I know it's not the same yarn, but it feels like with love.
It does. I agree. I thought the same thing when I was working on the headband or the ear warmer.
So if you're not familiar with We Crochet yarn and you're like, oh, I wonder how it feels like, really, this is what it feels like to me. It feels like with love to me. Or even like Hobby Lobby's I Love This Yarn. That also feels like with love. It's all along the same same base. It's a premium acrylic. It has a very good hand. It feels very good. Okay, so I'm up to my last corner here. Oh my gosh. Do you guys remember your first granny squares?
I do. So my mother-in-law taught me to crochet, or re-taught me, I should say, when I was like 24. And the pattern that she picked for me, now I know she loves me, so that wasn't it, but the pattern she picked for me was 120 granny squares sewn together in like a motif.
Oh gosh.
So my first project ever was this crazy blanket. And you know what? I'm telling you, granny squares is really what made me comfortable with my tension, holding my hook. They're awesome.
Yeah, they're really good. All right, so I'm at the end of my round, you guys. And this again is, I could chain one and join with the slip stitch, but I don't have to do that. I can do a half double crochet. So I'm going to yarn over, go into the third chain, do my half double crochet. Now I'm supposed to change colors again. What color do I use? Oh, it's
so now this color will be your main color.
Okay. So like I could use this.
Oh yeah.
That's Brava bulky. I don't want to use bulky.
Oh yeah, you don't want bulky.
Like gray? What gray?
Yeah, gray's good. Mm-hmm. I used gray.
All right. So I cut my yarn, that out of the way. Grab this one. You know what's really cool about this? Like you said, it's all the colors, but you can pick which ones you really like and then order full balls of it. You know what I mean? It's a great way.
It's great. So I don't know if any of you use different things to make samples. So like I used to have a card of different yarns that I liked, and I'd put like a little piece of the yarn and then what the yarn was and what color I liked. So the Brava mini pack does all that work for you, because it's literally like Marley said, you pick the color that you want and then you order more of that color.
Right. Okay. So this final round here, round 4, this is why I did not put the chart on there, guys, because this round is different, because we're going to set up this round to make it easy to seam. All right. We're going to do single crochets around this entire motif. So it's like we're doing a single crochet border. So we chain 1. And in this space, so around our half double crochet, we're going to do 3 single crochets. Do I want 3? No, I want 1. I want 1. Catherine, will you change that to 1? I don't know why I wrote 3. It's supposed to be 1 single crochet.
Yeah, I got it.
Then in the next 3 stitches, I'm going to put a single crochet into each one. So all the way around, I'm essentially going to put a single crochet in the top of each double crochet. And I'm going to put 1 single crochet into each chain 1 space. So I'm like filling it in. So in each of my doubles, I'm going to put a single. And then in each of my chain 1 spaces, I'm going to do 1 single, with the exception of my corners. And why is that, guys? Because we have to turn our corners. So in our corner, I want you to do 2 single crochets. That allows us to turn the corner. And then you would do your singles in the top of all your stitches and work down. You guys with me? Let's see, 1, 2, 3. So this is adding a border, really easy. We're just using the stitches we have available to us, which is really great because we don't have to worry about working along the rows, right? Because we have live stitches all the way around. So we don't have to worry about evenly spacing stitches along like a side edge row, because we have all of these stitches here just waiting for us to be used, which is super convenient. Let me get all the way around this. 1, 2, 3. And there's 1, Sometimes I wonder if people stumble upon my YouTube channel and they see these lives that are like 1, 2, 3 hours, and they're like, why the heck would anybody want to sit there and watch that? But
little do they know.
Little do they know. I mean,
it's a party the whole time. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty intense. And rightly so. It's supposed to be. All right. So I'm just coming around. You guys are doing the same, hopefully. Once you get this done, you're going to do 4 more, all right? Because we want to make 5 total. And weave in your ends as you go. It'll be easier. I know you're going to be tempted to just get started on the next one. Take the time, weave in your ends, and be done with it. Because once you finish all 5, you're then going to seam them together with a slip stitch. I shouldn't say Chrissy chose the slip stitch, which is a great choice. I would have chosen the same one because it's very easy to do. It looks really cool on the front of the fabric, and it makes it so that it's one of the easiest ones to learn because it's very similar to like a 3-needle bind off. Okay. Should probably write that in the instructions too, that it's very similar to a 3-needle bind off. When you get to the end, you go into the first single crochet, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then pull it through the loop on your hook. So that is called joining with a slip stitch for the round. Now in knitting, you guys, when you join in the round for knitting, right? Usually you would cast on your stitches and then it just says join to work in the round. And for knitting, you just start knitting, right? You just start knitting. In crochet, usually you will join with a slip stitch and then continue on. So usually you'll join with a slip stitch and then we have to do some sort of a chain or a stack stitch or something, right? So that our first stitches are the correct height and you continue on. So it's different from knitting in that way. And so honestly, because I was a crocheter first and then went to knitting, when I first learned to knit and I was making something in the round for the very first time, and it said to join to work in the round, I was very confused because I knew that there wasn't a slip stitch in knitting. I was like, how do I join to work in the round? Like, how do I do this? And I spent like an hour trying to figure out how I joined to work in the round in knitting for a pair of socks. And finally, somebody just was like, you just start knitting. I was like, what do you mean you just start knitting? Like, you just start knitting. I'm like, it's that easy? Like, I was so distraught. But in crochet, you join with a slip stitch to finish that round. Okay. It finishes the round. Now there's different ways to join with a slip stitch, but we're going to join in this method where you just go in like you're going to crochet into it and then pull that all the way through. Okay. Everybody with me on that?
Yeah, they want to know if they can see that up close instead of in gallery view.
Oh, am I in gallery?
Yeah, you're in gallery right now.
I didn't know that. I apologize. I will rip that out and show you. I apologize, guys. So I'm going to do my last single crochet. So that's the first single crochet I did. So I literally just go underneath the top of the stitch, yarn over, pull that yarn over through the stitch. So I have 2 on my hook. I just continue to pull that through. So it's like a bind off. Pull it through, just like a bind off. And then it says fasten off. So essentially, if you chain 1, pull that through, give it a tug, and everything's finished. Okay, so you have all these ends. We do not crochet over them. You grab your tapestry needle and really quickly thread it on. I'm working on the wrong side. I'm going to thread it through the bottom of those stitches for a couple. Pull it through. I'll come back. I'm going to try and go through the bottom of the same stitches and grab or take my needle. It's kind of working through the yarn I just pulled through as well. So it's kind of doing double duty. Pull it back. That would actually be enough for me. You could do it one more time if you want, but I would be all right with that, especially for a piece like this, like that's not getting like, you know, it's not going to be super pulled apart or anything like that, like a blanket or whatnot. With this one, you could do the same thing. You could go underneath these gray ones here if you want, because it'll be hidden enough. So I'm just going the opposite direction, notice. Make sure it's nice and pulled nice. And then I'm gonna come back, and again, I wanna make sure I'm going underneath the same stitches, and see how I'm going through the pink. So I cut through the yarn that I just pulled through. It's called burying your ends. That would be enough for me. Not always, guys. Sometimes I'll do it 3 times, but that's plenty for this one. And you would do that for all of these, okay? Y'all with me? All right. So you weave in all of your ends. Weave in all your ends. Once you get all these done, you're gonna line them up. I'm gonna try and grab another piece of crochet so that I don't have to. That's not gonna work very well. Give me just a second. You guys talk amongst yourselves real quick.
So Catherine, that blog post that you mentioned about that other blanket also talks about that granny blanket that I mentioned earlier. And I didn't mention that we do not use that blanket because if we would, it would probably fall apart, because while my mother-in-law taught me how to make the granny squares, she lives in Ohio, I'm in Maryland, so we weren't together when I actually went to join them. So I cut off the yarn in all the wrong places. I didn't weave in my ends correctly. I crocheted over a lot of ends. So literally that blanket would fall to pieces if we probably used it. So it just hangs on a quilt rack for decoration.
But it's still there. You still have it.
It's still there.
All right,
That's
so
right.
I'm gonna bring this in. This is what we used last week. Obviously we did edging. So we're going to pretend we have another granny square here. But essentially, because we've done these single crochets around the whole piece, it's very similar to what you've done right here, right? So if this were the same size, you'd partner them up just like this. Is everybody with me on this? I'll start down here at the corners, like if they were both at the corners. And what you're going to do is with your color D, so with the gray, I'm going to use a different color because I can. With your gray, for this, I'm just going to use pink just to show you. This would be number 1. Actually, how do I say this? So in the instructions, I told you to do the left side of number 1 to the right side of number 2. So we're going to say this is number 1, this is number 2. So this is the left edge of number 1. This is my right edge of number 2. You guys with me on that? Okay. It doesn't matter how this is oriented. You decide whatever works best for you. It really does not matter. It's the beauty of working in the round. You're going to join with a slip stitch. So this one's already joined, but if I wanted to join with a slip stitch, all I do is I take my hook, I'll go into wherever I want to join. I'll yarn over, pull up a loop, and I've joined with a slip stitch, okay? And you see along these edge here, you have a loop. It's on the outside and a loop that's on the inside. You guys see that? So there's a loop on the outside. There's a loop on the inside. It's the V. It's the V. There's a loop on the outside and a loop on the inside as it refers to, like, as the two are coming together. Then over here, there's a loop on the outside, a loop on the inside. So like, there's the V. You guys see that? Is that close enough? What we're going to do, we're going to slip stitch these together, but we're going to do it with the inside one from this one and the outside one from that one, so to speak. The two that are in the center, the two loops that meet in the center, we're going to slip stitch those together. Okay. Could you do it where you slip stitched all of them together? Yes. There's a lot of different joins out there we could use. this one's super easy to do. So what I like to do is, I don't know if you did it this way, Chrissy, but I did. I essentially take your wrong sides, put them together, and I go through the back of one. So I go through the back loop of that one, and then it'll be this one here. It's the front loop as it's facing me, right?
Yep.
Yarn over, pull it through the pink one first, pull it through the gray one next, pull it through the one on your needle. It's like a 3-needle bind off, y'all. You're going into one, going into the second, yarning over, pulling through both, and then pulling through the loop on your hook. Welcome to the 3-needle bind off. Make sure that's written in there. You guys see this? So those of you who are knitters, this is actually a way for you to do a bind off. If you are looking for a 3-needle bind off, but you don't have a 3rd needle, you could use your crochet hook. Actually, it's a lot faster. If you're trying to put things together. What's going to be cool is this going to put a seam on the right side of the fabric, which is what I wanted, because I think the seam adds great texture and dimension to the headband or ear warmer or blanket or garment or whatever you want to use this kind of a join for. You don't have to do it like this. You could do it the other way. You could do whatever you want. I like the way it looks. So as I'm doing this, I come all the way up to the corner. Okay. I would fasten off. And right there, I'd have 2 of the pieces seamed together. And if you're using the same color yarn, it's not going to show. Or if you want to use different color yarn, it really doesn't matter. Okay. So you're going to join all of them in this way. So that's 1 to 2. You'll add 2 to 3. Then you'll do 3 to 4, 4 to 5. And then once you get them all done, pretend this is 5. You're going to have this edge of 5 come over and meet up this edge of 1, right? To form a circle. You're going to seam those together, and that's going to give you a circle. Is that enough demonstration for everybody? I want to make sure that makes sense.
Just getting a second for the delay.
Okay. From there, Chrissy, I'm going to have you give them an explanation of how you did the lining. So once that's all, I'll have you talk about that.
Okay.
So I'm going to take this off my hands. If once I get the okay that everybody's good.
Yes, we're getting lots of thumbs up. That's awesome. Yes, looks good like that.
Sweet. Okay. So I'm going to take this off my hands. And hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to put us on gallery so everybody can see all of us right now.
Okay.
So far, guys, so what we have here, you're making these little squares. Now, if your square is coming out really big, don't be discouraged. Set it aside. You now have a nice little coaster for your desk. Make some more. Like, it's really that easy. You want these nice and tidy, because think about it. You're going to put it around your head, around your ears. Okay. So you want it big enough that it's going around your head, but you don't want it so big that it's going to be, like a crown. Right. So
right.
Be precise with it. Once that's done and everything's woven in, you have it seamed together. Like I said, you don't have to add a lining, but like I said, like the big buzzword, the big thing that a lot of us are, oh man, the whole thing just fell. That a lot of us are trying to do is, recycle, reduce, reuse, right? So let's use some of our fabric we have. I mean, you could probably use, could you use like LuLaRoe leggings and stuff? I mean, why not? Some of them are really soft.
You could.
Yeah. So you could pull out an old sweatshirt. You could pull out an old fleece vest or something, maybe that has a hole in it. If you're like me and you have a ton of fleece left over from like those Joanne sales where you think you're going to make one of those tie blankets for Christmas and you just ran out of time, but you have all of this fleece laying around. You could use that. Like it could be really super easy. I mean, there's a lot of good uses for fleece. Catherine has a whole tutorial that's going to be coming up around Christmas time about how to crochet around fleece. So there's a lot of good uses here. So my point is, you don't have to be a seamstress. You don't have to be really good at sewing to do this. You probably, I mean, depending on how thick your fabric is that you're going to be using to line, you might be able to get by with some yarn and a tapestry needle to seam it. But honestly, you just grab some thread and a needle, like just make it real simple for yourself. But I'm going to let Chrissy take it away and talk to you about this. Cause honestly, you guys, I said, hey, why don't you do this? And I didn't give her any instruction. She was like, okay, I got this. So Chrissy, it's all yours.
All right. Yeah. So like Marley said, I mean, every single one of us has a tin canister somewhere from somebody's grandma that's got thread and a needle in it. You know that you do. I literally just have a canister full of thread and needles from my great aunt. I'm not a seamstress by any means. So if I can do this, you can totally do this. I literally just went to the thrift store and bought a child's sweatshirt. It had a stain on the front. I knew that either nobody was going to buy it or it was something that I could cut apart and not feel bad, right? So I literally just cut the back off the sweatshirt and fit it to the size of each side of my headband. So you'll see here that I actually lined it. It's 2 pieces. One continuous piece, you could do that too. Really for me, it was just easier for me to do 2 pieces and just line it up the middle. But you just want to make it the size of this. You want to make it a little bit bigger because you do want to have a hem here because you don't want it to hang off the end here. You don't want, when you cut certain fabrics, they'll fray really bad. You don't want it to start pulling or anything like that. So you do want to have a little bit of a hem here. So cut it a little bit wider than what your ear warmer is so that you're able to fold it over. I took straight pins. If you don't have straight pins, you don't need to do that. What that does, if you have straight pins, which I think you can buy I think it's 50 of them for a couple bucks at like Michael's. But straight pins allows your fabric to stay so it's not moving around when you're trying to sew it. And then once you have it stuck down, you could even use safety pins. If you don't have straight pins, you can safety pin it to the ear warmer. You're just taking a needle and thread. Again, if you look at my stitches, I'm not a seamstress. I just tried to do it as even as possible around the edge of it, not too close to the end so you're not falling off. But again, just leaving myself a little hem so that it was nice and clean, the edge here. And really, guys, this took me like not even an hour. So it's not something, again, I do not sew ever. This was something Marley said, do you want to do this? And I said, oh, okay. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. But yeah, it's great because it's very, very soft. The fabric you choose, you want to do something soft because it's going to be what touches your forehead. And I love granny squares. Like I said, I love them so much. But if you weren't to line it, it's probably not going to be the warmest, right? Because there are going to be holes in your fabric. When you line it, though, it just gives you that extra layer of warmth. So it's a really good feature to it. It's a great thing to do if you want to be adventurous and try it. Why not? Why not?
So I wanted to point something out that's really exciting. So obviously I showed you guys how to join the granny square. After you did that, what you will do, and you'll notice on the instructions, you add a round of double crochets around the top and you add a round of double crochets around the bottom. Now, if you wanted to do the lining while it's still flat before you actually join it to work in the round, technically you could do that. Like you could do the lining and then join it to work in the round and then add an edging around the top and bottom. Maybe you choose what's called a crab stitch instead of a double crochet. Like you could do that. But I mean, sky's the limit. Have some fun with it. And like I said, if you do it that way, if you do it where like you add the border after, it might make it easier if you wanted to use like a sewing machine, because you could just use a sewing machine and just do straight lines, get it all on there. But this is a really great way to just take that little extra jump up of your crafting, right? So that way, if you're making them for holiday gifts, for Christmas is a holiday gifts, baby shower gifts, craft fairs. I know craft fairs are really catching up right now. And you might think, oh, I don't have an hour in my time, but I do have a sewing machine. I know how to use that. I could do that. Like this is a great way to use up those old clothes and just spice up your stuff a little bit better. You know what I mean?
Christy Hardy told me to try it on, so I'm going to put it on.
Oh, it's so cute on you.
So we're good. So we're in a good place because my hair is already in a bun. My evening's over. I can mess up my
Dude, it's so adorable. Like I seriously want to make one for football games. And I love that it has 5 granny squares. It's not 4.
Yes, I think of you when I do things.
I also really love that each of your granny squares are different because honestly, depending on what coat you're wearing, you could turn it in any direction.
Yes, you could put different ones in the front. Yes.
It is so great. So on another note, y'all, if you wanted to make like just 2 granny squares, you could do like a cuff of a mitten. So those of you who are knitters, you could make a cuff in granny squares, pick up and knit stitches around, very much like we did in BiCrafty Bootcamp, where we picked up the stitches and worked around and make a mitten in like a knit mitten part. So you could have a BiCrafty actual mitten if you wanted to. There's a lot of options here. So, first off, that's adorable, Chrissy. And thank you so much for doing it. But I think my whole takeaway from all of this with all of you is that I really hope you understand why we're sticking with the granny square and why we're really using it as our stitch of choice to show you how to do all of this stuff. So yeah, we are going to make a granny square blanket. That's what we're doing. It's not just a traditional granny square like this. It's similar to it. But it's super cute and it's just fun to make. It'll be fun to make and it's a lot of learning to it. I think you'll enjoy it. We also have planned a granny square bag. So we're going to do a granny square bag. But I think that's where the granny squares end. From there, we have other stuff we will be learning, but I really want to make sure that we are taking the time to learn everything we need to learn. And why waste time learning new stitches too at the same time? That's just too much to add into the mix because there was we've been on here 2 hours. That's a ton of information to throw at you and to throw in like a whole nother stitch in the mix. That just doesn't make sense. So whether you like granny squares or not, these are really good tools for you to use to expand your skills. And like I said, I get it. Some of you grew up in the 70s and 80s and are over granny squares, but I'm telling you, the other people in your life right now, especially the younger generation, they are all about it. Like all about it.
I have to say though, I haven't seen any complaints about the granny squares though.
Good.
I haven't seen anyone complain. I think there's so much versatility to granny squares and so much that you can do with them that even though you're making the same stitches, the things that you can make with them, it's really fun no matter what. So I think they're just so versatile that you can't really be upset with granny squares.
And then once you learn them, there's so many variations on them. Like there's not beyond the classic granny square. There's so many square variations that become so much easier once you've learned the basic one.
Well, and it's interesting because Robin, like she calls every motif stitch a granny square. She's like, they're all just variations of that type of piece. And so it's funny because there's little things like that we differ. Like this is a granny square. The other pieces, those are motifs. To her, they're all a granny square. Every single motif or square she does, that's a granny square. The entire BiCrafty Champions workshop, that was a granny square. And so it makes me laugh, because she also crochets over her ends. It drives me nuts. And she laughs. She goes, drives me insane. It just, have fun with it, y'all. Have fun. Look at how far you have come. Many of you didn't even like to pick up a crochet hook to pick up stitches in your knitting. And now look what you're doing. Like, this is amazing. Like I said about the crochet socks workshop, you could absolutely do that workshop eventually. Whether you could do it right now, I think it's probably just that little step further than what you're ready for right now. Honestly, like that's my honest opinion, but I know for a fact you will be able to do that workshop probably in about 2 or 3 weeks. So why not take advantage of the price? Like it's $19.99. It's going to be $40 after that. Like, and it's worth every single penny. It's amazing. I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of it. We put a lot of time and energy and work into it, just like we do these. And just think about this, guys. Eventually these classes, this boot camp is going to be a workshop on its own. So you guys are going to be like, I did that. I was the prototype. Like you guys are going to be the ones. So, yeah, that's how that goes. All right. So that's it for me this week of BiCrafty Bootcamp crochet lessons for knitters. I hope you guys have enjoyed this and you enjoy your new ear warmer. This is not a headband. This is a ear warmer. It is an ear warmer. I think it's so cute. Gosh, it's so cute. I hope you guys love it too. And I can't wait to see yours. Make sure you share with us on social media, #BiCrafty Bootcamp, #Marley Bird, #Marley Made Me Do It, or MMMDI. And if you are using the We Crochet Brava yarn, make sure you tag them and let them know that you heard about their yarn here at Bootcamp, because I mean, it's important for them to know that we are talking about their yarn and them seeing us using the yarn. And guys, honestly, like, this is me stepping back from the fact that they're sponsoring this. It's really enjoyable to work with. Like it's really good, because I get asked by a lot of different companies, guys, to use their stuff and promote their stuff. And if I don't like it, I won't do it. So anything you ever see me using on camera, you can 100% guarantee that I do enjoy using it, because I won't use anything that I don't like. I don't want to tell you to buy something that I don't like. Like I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? I mean, just like I won't do patterns that I don't think are appropriate. Like, you didn't see a crochet mask on my channel. Like, not going to happen. So you can always guarantee that I'm, you're going to just trust what I'm doing. That's what I'm using. So it's good stuff.
Yeah. You'll just get crochet boobs from Marley.
Crochet. Yeah, there you go. Crochet boobs. Yep. That's what you get. I should have made it into a pillow, right? Then I could have nuzzled it at night. Yes. What is that?
You should have. Hello. Missed opportunity there.
That's my granny boob right there. I'm serious, guys. That was the funniest thing, because I was in college at the time. And so I remember I was sitting in my bed in college and I was so proud of myself. I was like, look at this. And I held it up. It's a boob. I think I actually said tit. I was like, it's a tit.
I had a similar incident when, those little rainbow rattles that you can make for babies, you can crochet for babies, the shape of a rainbow. Color choice counts. And mine was like a darker pink on the inside, and then like a lighter pink, and then a tan. And I was like, oh, that looks like a vagina. I can't. I'm like, I made that. I didn't mean to do that.
Right? It happens.
Like, I can't use that.
It happens. It's almost like we should do some sort of like a thing of like a hashtag oops. Oops, I did that. Oops, I did that. Anyways, all right. On that note, good luck with your project this week, everybody. I can't wait to see what you're doing. If you get a chance to take pictures before you line it and take pictures while you're lining it and after, that's just fun to see. And don't forget to share this boot camp. I'm pretty sure I had them leave a comment last week so that they could win a prize, Chrissy. So what I will have you do after, do you want to just pick one right now? I don't know if are you able to see last week's?
You know what? Probably not. So I'll do that. I'll do that after we're done. I'll go through and pick someone from last week.
Okay, cool. So just leave a comment on their comment and tell them to contact you. So we'll pick somebody for a winner. So let's do a winner for this week. And this week's winner is going to be able to win any of my workshops I have available on Member Vault.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a huge one.
That's a big give.
Did you see their faces, you guys? That's a big one. That's a big one.
That's a big one. Oh, you know what? I think you did pick someone last week because it was the We Crochet gift.
Yeah, but I think I had them leave a comment for the people who weren't watching live so that they have a chance to win something.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm pretty sure. If not, we're going to do that. Give them a free pattern. Okay. So this week it'll be one of the free, it'll be a free Member Vault workshop. So either my BiCrafty Champions workshop or the Classic and Colorful Crochet Socks workshop. Okay.
That's crazy.
You're going to pick either one of those. But here's what it is. I want you to leave a comment beneath this video. I'm going to tell you what the comment is, but I also want you to tag me in social media. And in the tag, I want you to say something positive about BiCrafty Bootcamp, like learning so much about BiCrafty Bootcamp hashtag Marley Bird, hashtag BiCrafty Bootcamp. All right. Because what we're going to do is we will pick a winner next week before we go live. And I want to make sure that not only do I see your comment, but I want to go and find you on social media to make sure you did that. So here's what you're going to do. In your comment, first off, tell us what your Instagram tag is or whatever it is, wherever we're going to find you, preferably on Instagram, guys. Tell us what your Instagram tag is. And I want you to tell us, what's your favorite candy? Halloween's coming up.
Good choice.
What's your favorite candy? All right. What's your favorite candy? Don't forget to tell us what your Instagram tag is. That way we can check. All right. And when you tag us, just, I mean, obviously I'm the Marley Bird on Instagram, but hashtag Marley Bird, hashtag BiCrafty Bootcamp. All right. And like, just give us some props. Let us know.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's asking a lot, but this is a big gift. This is a big prize.
Big gift.
A big gift.
Huge.
Huge. All right. All right. So you're going to leave that comment beneath this video. Make sure you guys hit like, hit subscribe, do all the things. If you're not part of the BiCrafty newsletter, make sure you do that as well. You'll see a link right at the top of this lesson. And I think that's literally everything now, that it's 8 o'clock at night, 2-hour class. Hope you guys loved it. And we'll talk to you guys again very, very